Welcome back to the WSU Democrats podcast. My name is Ethan Bishop. I'm the president of the organization, and today we have a very special guest for you guys today, which I'll allow to introduce themselves.
Hey, I'm Jeremy Thompson. I am the chair of the Weber County Democratic Party.
Awesome, and we're also joined by...
I'm Vaughn, I'm the vice president.
And Alexandria, the Women's Committee Chair.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for being here. So, my first question, just to jump right into it, is what are the core responsibilities of the chair of the Weber County Democratic Party? What made you want to take on that role in the first place?
Oh, okay. Yeah, so let's answer it backwards then, right? So I was the treasurer. It's kind of interesting how I came into the role. You know, I participated in, I was in the military for 21 years. And as part of that, especially once I became an officer, I didn't do anything political. Right, because as a leader, you know, you want to be respectful of people's beliefs and stuff. So it was never, just wasn't something we really talked about at work. I didn't talk with the airmen that worked for me about it. And so I got out, and 2 years after I retired, and I retired in 2020, I was like, oh, hey, I can start doing stuff with politics. I really believe in service. I believe in supporting your community and supporting your people. And as much as I'd like to think that I'm the kind of person that can just sit back and, yeah, they'll take care of it, I'm just not that person. So originally with the party, I was the Veterans Caucus chair, and then they didn't have a chair of issue and identity caucuses, so I volunteered for that. Nobody ran against me. You're going to see a theme here real quick. And then our treasurer resigned, and so I volunteered as treasurer. Nobody ran against me. And then I did that for like 2 years. Learned a lot. Should have learned some more, to be honest. And then, you know, we had 2024, and people were very, very, very upset. And so I sat through quite a few meetings with candidates where I was just, you know, the military training came in handy, right? Of, okay, I just got to sit here and listen, right? People are upset. And some of the complaints were not valid. They were not as a result of what the party did, but there were some complaints that were very, very valid. And so that was, you know, November, December 24. And then the whole executive committee was getting reelected in 25. And I was like, I looked around, I was like, okay, who's thinking about running? Oh, nobody. Okay. So, well, I'm planning the convention, you know, with the chair we had. And I just was like, okay, well, I'll run and I'll be chair. Nobody ran against me. So that's how I became the chair of the party. And as far as my responsibilities are, right, you know, I lead the party, right? Like I set the tone. You know, there's a whole list in our rules, on our you know, very hard to digest kind of rules. But I mean, the overall thing is I set the tone for the party. I set priorities. And I'm the one that gets the executive committee together to focus on what we're going to do for the year, or for the 2 year. It's a 2 year term, right? So,
Gotcha.
For our executive committee, that is about organizing and building. The other piece that's really big is I'm not going to do this forever. You know, at some point, somebody here may want to be the chair, and absolutely no shade on Kate, our last chair, but. It's the same thing for me. I was treasurer. I did not have things to hand over to the new treasurer that were really that helpful. And so that's been one of the big things we focused on is once we're gone, right? Like maybe I'm going to run for office, or maybe I'm going to run for something else in the state party. Whoever comes behind me doesn't need a blank slate. Like that's the worst thing we could do. Now, if they want that, that's their decision. But like, okay, hey, here's our policies. Here's the processes we set up. Here's the documentation that we have. And so that's been a big, big focus. Not the last 4 months, but, you know, around that's been a pretty big focus.
Awesome. Yeah, great answer. Now, my next question is, how does the Weber County Democratic Party plan to support Democratic nominees heading into the general election, especially in key races like HD 10 and SD 5?
That's a good question. We're trying to figure that out, honestly. So we had our Orton McKay fundraiser. We raised 25 grand, more money than the party's ever raised, right? And to be clear, that's not because of me. You know, I helped with the planning process, did all the stuff you're supposed to do. I do like organizing parties and dinners and stuff. It's a very strange enjoyment that I have because I don't think most people would say that. But we had Ken Martin, chair of the DNC, come out. That's why we raised so much money. So what we're doing right now is the state party offers some programs. We have consulting firms around here that can offer programs and support. And so trying to find ways to get that money to the candidates in the right way. Because I don't want to just hand candidates checks, right? Because love our candidates, but it's usually not the most effective way to spend funds. Like, let's hand a firm that you work with a check to get people to knock doors or to send texts or to do, get volunteers out, that sort of thing. But we're actively in discussions, either with the state party and a few other things right now about how to do that.
Nice. Do you have any more questions before we move on?
I was a really big fan of what you were saying of sort of building something that you could leave to the person behind you. I find that longevity is sort of something that we are lacking as a society in terms of our mindset and how we build. What would you say are like the 2 or 3 things that you find most effective in building that sort of foundation for longevity?
So there's 3 things
Okay.
that are kind of documentation. Mm-hmm. Nobody likes writing that stuff. I'd have to do it for work and I hate it, right? So just documenting what we're doing, where things are at, making sure our Google Drive is organized in a way that makes sense so that when somebody new comes on board, it's reasonable. The other thing that we're doing is we're getting an office, right? We're getting it's like right down the street here. I think it's Harrison and 36th. And having that'll be for 2 years, at least initially, and I'd love it I don't know if I'm going to run again. I'm thinking about it, or if, maybe somebody else really wants to run and they have great ideas. But having a place in the community where people know they can come, where our issue and identity caucuses can have meetings, where our candidates can fundraise, where we can store signs and other documentation. We're going to get merch, so where we can have merch. A spot where people know that's where the Democratic Party is at. Mm-hmm. Preferably not for firebombs, right? But for people to come by and participate in the democratic process. Mm-hmm. And then the third thing, and this is a bit of disappointment, is because I've wanted to start this since the first quarter of the year, but I as a new chair, this is my first campaign cycle, really, of not municipal candidates, but like full, House district and all that candidates. I wanted to start doing like quarterly get-togethers with our young Dems and our progressive Dems. Just generally people 31 and under for the most part. And because one of the things I noticed, and even happened to me, and I haven't always been a Democrat, but as a young person, like, oh, we'll just have the young folks show up and they can take care of all the volunteer stuff and registering people and this and that, and they haven't really been engaged in the leadership process, in the building process. So I wanted to do that in the first quarter of this year, but it was just not possible with all the stuff that we had going on. So that's the other thing is getting that outreach to the young people and for them to know that, hey, you're not just a body pool, but we want you involved in leadership positions. So I've talked to like the Jaron, the chair of the Progressive Dems, about like, hey, like, if you have time, we'd like to get you involved in some of these campaigns. Julie's doing stuff with Landslide right now, and she's the chair of the Young Dems. And so just getting those folks together in a way where they can have input into everything, instead of just like, hey, we need you to go knock on some doors, right? So that's been kind of the overall thought, as far as to keep that going. And the other thing I guess I'll add at the end is training, right? What's the difference between a county delegate and a state delegate? What does a precinct chair do? What does a House district chair do? What does an issue and identity caucus chair do? Nobody talks about it, right? Like, I get specifically the delegate question right now. I get asked all the time, well, I'm a county delegate, so I can be a state delegate. No, it's 2 different things, right? And that is the part that is confusing, right? Because Weber does it one way, Cache County does it a different way, Salt Lake County does their own thing. And so, if people move up here, they're like, oh, well, this is how we did it down wherever. Yeah, it's different here. And so having that opportunity for training, just, maybe something once a month, Zoom call where people can come in, we'll run through some slides and have a little time for questions, can be really impactful. So.
That's awesome. I'm really happy to hear that one of the biggest things that you've been wanting to work on is involving the sort of younger, more progressive elements in Utah. I think that's exactly what especially us here want to hear from people in positions like yours. Is that not only do you want us to just be, the sort of young, fresh bodies to do the actual work, but to involve us in the actual leadership and policy, and teaching us how to take the reins when you go on to other projects.
Yeah, because I'm 46. I'm not a young person anymore, right?
In politics, that's young.
Yeah, I know in politics it's young, but I can still remember being in my 20s, right? And the way people treated me in my 20s, and you're actually going to feel like that throughout your entire life.
Oh yeah,
right. But the passion and the energy that young people have, notwithstanding the challenges with trying to find just affordability, trying to find all of that. My daughter's 19, she'll be 20 in a month, so getting all of that passion channeled the right way, because that's another challenge, right? Is I'm pretty laid back, right? I'm generally a laid back person. It takes a lot for me to start biting people's heads off. This is not so much the case for younger people usually, right? It's just everything's black and white, it's very emotional, right? Yes. And so and I don't mean that in a patronizing way.
No, of course.
But, to sit there, I've been in some chat groups where I've seen some young people reply, and I'm like, you are alienating 70% of this chat group with that reply. Somebody put something out that was, done in the spirit of support and this, but because they phrased it in a way that you find offensive, you're putting them on blast in front of 70 people in a signal group. That is not an effective use of whatever.
And with that in mind, how would you say that sort of young people who are sort of maybe more of that kind of firebrand, for me personally, I have friends who are members of DSA, members of PSL. How would you sort of communicate that idea of, yes, we have this passion, we have this energy, we have these firebrands. That's not always what we need in every situation.
Right. And so, part of it's learning to read a room, right? Or a text room, I guess, right? But that passion is good. I'm never going to say that passion's bad. It's just, if you are in a group of people that are, you're all working towards the same goal, then let's extend some grace. Right. Let's extend some support to those folks. Maybe they'll say the bad thing or say a bad thing. So very rarely is it done maliciously.
Right.
It's usually done out of real ignorance, right? And just to recognize that and extend some patience. And you're going to find out I was at the last No Kings, and I don't even know if the story applies, but I'm going to walk through it anyway, right? I was tabling for us there, and a guy walked up, and he was like, which of your candidates aren't woke? And I'm like, dude, we're at a No Kings protest. You are not in the right spot.
Right.
And so I could have, GTFO, right? So I said, okay, well, what do you mean by woke? What is your definition of woke? Which is a favorite question to ask. Oh, yes. Right? And he's like, well, the trans. And I was like,
shout out.
Yeah. I was like, okay. I go, what do you mean? He's like, I just, the people that support trans this or, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, okay, all of our candidates support human rights and those are trans rights. Right. And he was like, and then he left. But at no point did I threaten him. At no point did I degrade him as a human being, right? I did not return energy like for like. I just let him know, hey, this is the standard here. And maybe go talk to a trans person. You'll find out, hey, they're just people too.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Big shocker.
So as for the next question, what would you say to someone at the state or national level who argues that Weber County is not worth serious investment and that resources should go instead to more reliable Democratic strongholds like Salt Lake City?
and so the whole goal in Weber is the blue dot of Weber. This used to be a very big Democratic stronghold, right? Orton McKay's named for the last, Democratic representatives that we had. And I would say, even with CD1 forming down there, why are you throwing money into a race that is, why would you throw more investment into a place that is already super blue? It doesn't make sense to me. How much bluer do you need it to be? And if you haven't gotten every seat already, how much more is another 10 grand, 100 grand, $1 million going to affect? That speaks to me more of an organizing challenge around those seats than an investment challenge. Now, if you look at that up here in Weber, sure, there's some spots that are, we're gerrymandered, right? Like we're super gerrymandered, especially in the state house and Senate. But we've got some really blue spots still. And we have House District 9. House District 9, very blue, terrible turnout, terrible voter turnout. Now, is that a messaging issue? Is that a communication issue? What is the challenge behind that? I can tell you if we invest heavily, like at House District 9, Angela Chobarker's running, great candidate, we could see some very real wins there that you're not going to see, and a win for a cheaper amount of money than you would see in Salt Lake for the same thing. So I think that's how I'd answer that question.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think really the only reason why you would invest in Salt Lake City so heavily like that is if it is like a statewide race and you want to up as much turnout as possible. But even then, you would want to try to narrow up the margins or even flip Weber and maybe even Davis County, just
Yeah.
trying to, get as many votes as you can. But as far as the competitive races go, I think a lot of that is HD10, HD9, SD5, I think was characterized as the most flippable Senate seat.
Yep.
So yeah, did you have any questions before we move on?
I was just gonna change the topic, but
Oh yeah, that's okay.
so given your extensive military background, I think a lot of people there's this idea that being in the military is more aligned with the Republican Party, but what about your personal experience kind of aligns you to the Democratic Party?
It's a great question because I'm on veterans boards and on Facebook, which I attempt to very rarely go on. All my, not all, but quite a few of my vet bros and sis's are Republican, and quite a few of them are MAGA Republican too. And I don't understand it at all. Like, you want to talk about a tyrannical organization? To be clear, I love the Air Force, right? I've been retired for 5 years, and I still every day I'm like, man, if I could go back, would I? The answer, to be clear, is not always yes. But there's still things that I love about it. But it is a tyrannical organization. They told me where to live. They told me what I had to do when I met somebody that was a higher rank than me. They allowed me extreme leeway to punish people that I outranked, right? And to me, that is like a clear indication of tyranny. And so I was enlisted, and then I commissioned and became an officer. And so it was very puzzling to me a lot, especially when you talk to people that are very proud, as they should be, of their veteran status, where they don't think, I don't know, I don't want to put words in their mouths, but like every 4th of July, I read the Declaration of Independence, right? I read the preamble of the Constitution. I don't read the whole thing, but I read the preamble fairly regularly. And it's an emotional thing for me. I really believe in those documents and what they represent for us as a nation. And then for people to come back and say like, oh, well, people that are here as refugees don't deserve due process. Okay, well, the Constitution is very clear on that. We all deserve due process. Well, but they're illegals. It doesn't matter. Like the Supreme Court has said this repeatedly, but, well, I'm a vet. I don't care, right? Like, you're wrong. and you took an oath to defend the Constitution. And so now you're saying you believe in the Constitution except for this one thing. Well, then you don't believe in the Constitution. That's how it rolls. Because, I mean, they come out with, especially the Supreme Court now comes out with things that I don't agree with, but I'll reflect on the Constitution and be like, yeah, that's how it goes, right? You don't always get what you want. And I think that's kind of the challenge, is the lack of compromise.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so I really like that insight. I've heard sometimes the military described as sort of a cult to the Constitution. How do you think that, like apart from sort of your experiences and your clear dedication to sort of legalistic framework of this country, how do you think that sort of constitutional cult affects veterans when they leave the force or the service?
What do you mean by constitutional cult, I guess I would say?
Like the whole sort of rhetoric of the point of the military is not, I forget the general, you could probably name him quicker than I could, who he has had the speech where he said we do not swear an oath to a king or to a dictator or to want to be a dictator, we swear an oath to the Constitution. How do you think that actually, like how does that actually play out? Like I mean, I know you sort of kind of talked about this a little bit, where like certain sort of factions will sort of have those unconstitutional beliefs. But how do you think the actual indoctrination of that loyalty to the Constitution, is it effective? Is it?
You're asking a really complicated question, right? So, especially across I was an airman, right? I was in the Air Force. I was in technology. So first of all, I'm in the Air Force. So they expected me to be smart already, right? And that is hate on both the Army and the Navy and the Marines, to be clear. And then I was in IT, and then I was in cyber, right? So I was expected to be a very diligent, critical thinker. No shade at all on our ground pounders, on our Marines and our Army that are combat arms, right? I would say that the expectation on them, as far as that goes, is very different, right? And so they respond to that in the way that they know how. I know when I was enlisted, the expectations for me were different than when I was an officer. When I became an officer, the expectations were in line with my responsibility, which was a whole lot greater. And so I was asked through the culture repeatedly to examine why I did things, because I had to plan 3, 5, 10 years out, or I was trying to. And not everybody has that experience. I can't really answer that question. I will say that, I went through basic training in 1999 before September 11th. And when I went through that basic training, that was very much focused on following lawful orders, on the Constitution, on doing the right thing. We went over our core values: integrity first, service before self, and excellence in all you do. And that was hammered home pretty hard. Now, everybody's a bell curve. It's one of my favorite things to say. And you get everybody gets through basic training. It's not terribly hard. It's just a commitment, and you got to, clench your jaw and just get through it. So I think the training is great there. I think the training that I got as an officer reinforced that even more. There was a whole lot more focus on lawful and unlawful orders, on the Constitution itself, the history and culture of the Air Force, and what it means to be an airman. And so I took that to heart. Not everybody does. So I think that's how I kind of address that.
Cool.
All right.
Thank you.
Well, given Trump's escalating rhetoric, abuses of power, and the broader threats posed by his movement, from immigration crackdowns to authoritarian-style politics, how do you think local Democratic parties like Weber County can effectively fight back?
Yeah, so I keep track of what's going on in the federal news, right? I call Blake Moore and complain to his office. But what I do as the chair is I focus on Weber County, right? Like, what's going on here as best I can, right? Because I work a full-time job too. So between that and being a chair, like it's hard to keep up on everything that's going on. But it's really just organizing locally. All your politics I mean, I'm sure you know, all politics is local politics,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
So, you know, you look at the people that were affected here in the Treasury, right, and the IRS, the stuff that's gone on there. You look at the impacts to Hill Air Force Base. My wife works on Hill Air Force Base, and the stupid things Doge made her do, and the insane amounts of stress that went on. You look at just all of those impacts, you know, federal and wildlife and all of that. And that can all be answered by getting rid of Blake Moore. Well, who's going to do that? You're not doing that at a federal level. You're doing that here. You're doing that here in Weber County. And you're doing that in Cache and Box Elder and Davis, right? Same thing for, you know, if you don't like things the state are doing, like all the bills that Trevor Lee puts forward that are, you know, very clearly anti-American, you know, for our values. You're not going to do that anywhere else but in the district that he represents. And so you have to do that locally. You know, seeing the brave Americans in Minneapolis that were fighting ICE, it's not going to happen here. We're not going to have well, I shouldn't say that. I would hope that we do not have the same type of ICE presence here that they do in Minneapolis. And so we have to respond differently. And if you go look at Byrne and the other organizations that are locally doing to fight ICE here, they're doing it in a way that applies to our community. And so that's what I do, right? Like I'm just going to focus on Weber County. So if you look at like our website, like we're not like, oh, did you see the picture of that Trump posted about, you know, him as Jesus, right? I thought it was terrible, but I'm not going to put that on the party website or throw it on our social media. Like, we got to focus on things that are Weber related.
Yeah, and I think to a certain extent also focusing on the candidates in Weber County also, that will help when there are federal elections because the down ballot effect will bring up ballot as well. And then also just every time you support a candidate who is espousing democratic values, I think that also just goes in the face of Trump and all that. So it helps each other, I'd say, helping out locally, and all politics is local, as you say. Now, since we're getting to the end here, what would success look like for the Weber County Democratic Party over the next 1 to 2 years?
All of our candidates are elected. Is the only thing I'm going to take for success, to be clear. Our job is, our mission is to get Democrats elected.
Amen.
We raised all this money. I expect to spend dang near all of it, right, in supporting these candidates. Again, how are we going to do that? Because you asked that earlier. Don't know yet. We still got to figure that out. But that's we had a discussion about this. I forget which meeting we were at, but when you often look at what political parties say they're doing, oh, we knocked on all these doors, we called all these people, we mailed all these postcards, and we did this many honkin' ways, and which don't do honkin' ways. They're a waste of time, right? Like
Somebody do during COVID.
yeah, fair. But like getting out and talking to people either on the phone or at their doors. I love knocking doors. You know, I've knocked doors almost every year. I didn't knock doors last year. I just placed literature last year, right? People will come to the door and they may be aggressive or they may be like, why are you knocking on my door? But nobody's ever been like, you know, cock their weapon and be like, start running.
That's what I was scared of when I was door knocking.
Yeah, I haven't. I'm 46. I'm a white male. I'm very aware of how I present myself, right? And so I've never had that issue. So I like knocking door. I hate making phone calls. But, you know, political parties will talk about like, oh yeah, you know, we did all these things. Great. How did the candidates do? Did they win or not? That's what I care about. Like, it was at Orton McKay at our fundraiser, right? I said, I love winning, but I hate losing more than I love winning, right? Like, I want all of our candidates to be elected. I want all of our school board candidates to be elected. I want all of our state school board candidates to be elected. One of the two candidates for Senate District 5, I want them to be elected. If I could elect them both, I'd want that too, right? And then obviously all of our House district candidates. Like that is, it's very easy. That is our gauge for growth and for success. It's not how much money we raise. That helps the candidates get elected. It's not that we have an office. That helps the candidates get elected. It's all about getting the candidates elected.
All right, well, last question really quick. What advice would you give to someone who hopes to one day become chair of the Weber County Democratic Party?
Ooh, man, I don't have a ready answer for that one. I've been asked variations of the other questions before. So I guess the first thing I would say, right, is assume ignorance instead of malice when you talk to people, right? Like, very rare, like even that guy that asked me about woke people, right? That dude was ignorant, right? Like, could there have been some malice there? Sure. But I can guarantee you he's never talked to a trans person, right? Or if he has, you know, it was at a protest and there was some raised emotions there, right? To be clear, it's the same thing for me. I grew up in the 80s and 90s, right? Being a homosexual in the 80s and 90s, way different than it was today. I was in the military when Don't Ask, Don't Tell was repealed. It was beautiful, right? To see these people being able to live their lives the right way. And a lot of that's just wrapped up in ignorance for that. So assume ignorance instead of malice the vast majority of the time. Learn how to talk to people that don't agree with you, and learn that you may not agree, and that's fine. At some point, people are toxic, and you need to figure out a way to deal with toxic people, right? And to be clear, that's both out of the party and in the party. And to be fair, I'm still working on that. Like, what does that mean? And then, you know, the last thing is look for opportunities to accept leadership positions. Start as a treasurer for a caucus or for a nonprofit, right? Maybe go from treasurer to vice chair or be a precinct captain, right? Look for ways to build your skill set slowly. That's what I did. Like in the Air Force, they make you do it, right? Because you get promoted. And I liked it. I liked doing it. I got out of the Air Force and I was like, hey, I'm just going to sit at home. I'm going to get a 9 to 5, play my video games, learn drums. And then I was like, oh, they need help. I have to go help. Like, that's how I view it, is I have to go help. So I think that's how I put it.
Well, that's awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here.
thank you.
Jeremy Thompson, chair of the Weber County Democratic Party. Yeah, make sure to check us out. Make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel and like the video. Have a nice day or night, everybody.